Morning program is actually organized by the Impact Center for Great Leadership. It's the initiative for Business School Netherlands and funded by the Culture Factor and sponsored by Change Global. It's important to know that this is an opportunity to provide insight and practical advice that we share under the Good Morning BSN for the purpose of providing participants with practical tools, short, pungent practical tools to improve their abilities across 4 pillars of leadership that we at BSN believe are crucial to making a difference in any organization in our world. It covers the concepts of responsible leadership, change leadership, performance leadership, and decision-making leadership. Today, our topic centers around decision-making leadership, and it's on what is needed to accelerate industrialization in Africa. Prepared for today's presentation is a great speaker, a very great Pan-Africanist who is particularly interested on issues related to industrialization. He's a development expert with over 25 years of very robust experience in key development areas such as SMEs, enterprise development, as well as digital empowerment, gender mainstreaming, peace and security, leadership and governance. He has spent substantial bulk of his career consulting and coordinating projects on democratic leadership training, research policy development. He currently serves as the Executive Director and CEO of the African Leadership Foundation and the Project Director of the CB Enterprise Development Center, Southwest. He himself is a great entrepreneur. He has consulted for a number of diverse range of organizations in 10 different countries, including the UNDP, FAO, UNECA, AU, ECOWAS, DRC. He's a fellow of both the Center for Applied Studies in International Negotiation in Geneva, Switzerland, and International Academy for Leadership in Germany. He brings wealth of experience to the table and currently serving also on the board of Business School Netherlands. He holds a position on the executive board of Firms Africa Solidaire, FAS, in Geneva. He's also a member of the Steering Committee of the Genders is My Agenda, GMAT, and he has done a number of projects, including development of designing a reporting, monitoring, and accountability tools for women's rights, which has created strategic roadmap for gender equality initiatives within Africa for regional and intergovernment organizations. He has supervised and executed over 672 entrepreneurship training workshops since 2008 to over 36,000 aspiring existing entrepreneurs. 45% are women. He has created over 838 new enterprises and expanded, diversified 9,664 existing enterprises with over $11 million in small business loans. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor to introduce to this audience this morning, Dr. Olumide Ajayi. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Before it starts,
thank you.
Before it starts to speak, it would be nice to also introduce the reflector. When the speaker finishes his speech today, the reflector will reflect for about 5 minutes. And it is important for us to also know who the reflector is. It's a great honor to have with us an individual who has been extremely global in his way of working. There's a gentleman who has worked for very notable organizations like KPMG. He has been a great investment banker who has also worked in various parts of UK, Frankfurt, in London, London. He had worked with Barclays Investment Bank in London, United Kingdom. He had worked with global corporate banking for the East, Middle East, and Africa region with JP Morgan. He had had cause to work on strategy and innovation. After I joined the African Export-Import Bank, he had worked as manager for strategy and innovation, senior specialist for strategy and innovation, senior manager for SME development. We are honored to have with us today a great gentleman who will be reflecting on the presentation of Olumide, and his name is Odi Akanoba. He's senior manager with SME development with African Export-Import Bank. Let's welcome Odi. Thanks for joining us this morning, Odi. Thank you. Straight to our presentation for today. I will ask Olumide to start his presentation. Arthur, show the slide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, LB. I also want to thank our president, the president of the Global Board of BSN, Madam Anit Njis, Madam Juanita Boa, who is our international director. Thank you for this initiative. My brother Okeke, thank you very much for putting all this together. It's a pleasure for me to be here this morning to make this presentation. I'll be speaking on what we need to do to accelerate internationalization in Africa. Let me go straight to slide 2, where I tried to explain that Africa has a lot of potentials. As you can see, that we have a lot of natural resources. Almost 82 trillion US$ is discovered natural resources, and we can generate a year, revenue for almost of about 30 billion US$. We have great resources around minerals, rivers, forestry, fisheries, value-added fisheries, and agriculture alone can fetch the continent 24 billion US$. Next slide. And it's important that we say and show this because 11 African countries are among the top 10 global resource countries in at least one major mineral, from cobalt, from platinum, from gold. You see, this map shows to us those countries. And why we are saying this is because if you have raw materials, then industrialization should not be a difficult thing for you. But what exactly is the problem? Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Okay. Now, we have challenges. No, the slide before this, please. We have, okay. Now, our challenges are similar when you look through Africa. Essentially, we continue to export raw materials with little value addition. Like I said in this slide, Africa export almost 69% of the world's raw cocoa beans, but only 16% of grounded cocoa. Typically, of course, it was 3 times this. And what even worse is that while we in Nigeria, or in Africa, generally in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, produces two kinds of cocoa powder. Countries in Europe produce up to 10 shades of cocoa powder. And all of this, they get verified. There are cocoa that come out of Calabar in Nigeria and Ghana that they normally use and buy at a premium to blend a particular type of chocolate. Aguala industrialization could open Africa up to a market net worth of around $100 billion a year by the year 2025, which is just 2 years away. Agribusiness can therefore be the engine of Africa structural transformation while creating decent non-agricultural jobs and increasing income and feeding Africa. Now, when you look at the next slide, it says to us that we actually have food security crisis. And many African countries remain major importers of wheat, which you can see from this. You see all the countries how much of wheat that we bring in, and we are blessed with a lot of land, arable land that we can use to produce raw material for industrialization. But what exactly is the problem? Next slide. Now, our approach to industrialization, we therefore, if we have all of this base and foundation, we therefore require new thinking, new approach. It will require new methodology and new insights, because talking about industrialization 15 years ago is different from what we have right now. So what I want to present this morning is, if we are going to advocate for industrialization in Africa, if we are going to develop appropriate strategy for industrialization in Africa, what should we be looking at? And I've listed about 9 or 8 items, which we'll just run through, so that at least we will be able to know that when you are dealing with industrialization framework in Africa, these key elements must be present in them. Next slide. First is that whatever kind of strategy we want to use for industrial transformation in Africa, it must provide food and fuel security. 820 million people, 11% of the world population, are undernourished, and a lot of them are in fact in Africa. Number two, because we currently have youth unemployment crisis, therefore our industrialization must also focus in bringing youth into employment. Foreign youth population unemployment in sub-Saharan Africa is about 7.1%, and if you really look at it in many other countries, far higher than this. Empowering you to participate in continent industrialization will therefore give us opportunity to harness the demographic dividends for inclusive growth. Next slide. Number 3. What should our strategy focus on? It must be technology driven and increase investment in digital infrastructure. You cannot industrialize effectively today if we don't invest in digitalization, in technology, because as at 2021, only 93% of Africa's population uses internet. 871 million people are not even realizing the digital dividends. So this, if we do, and if we, because of this advanced opportunity, we will be able to develop and grow our industries if we include technology right from the beginning, because we have the opportunity to do so. And number 4, it must be able to increase capacity to generate wealth within the value chain. What do I mean? You see, as of today, when you see most of the factories in Africa, of course, most of their raw materials come from outside. We are saying that from the field to the market, we must be able to create opportunity for our people to make money. Number 5. Next slide. Okay. Another issue, which of course I know it will interest our reflector, is that our industrialization process must be able to integrate SMEs into the industrialization framework as industries and SMEs. And I believe that when we advocate with government and leaders, we should also let them know that without a strong SME base, industrialization will be very, very difficult. Number 6, that the BSN also should take this up as part of our advocacy with African leaders, which is we need to drive and set up a value addition campaign We need to help government leaders to begin to show commitment in creating policies and implement strategies that promote value addition. And therefore, and I said that this value addition campaign can be driven by what I call the Troika, the African Union Commission, the African Development Bank, and the African Export-Import Bank. Next slide. Of course, this is very important. I've said this severally. You cannot be producing what you don't like to consume. So for us in Africa, it is important that we begin to change our mind. Part of the value addition campaign must be one in which we begin to change our food consumption board and menu. Number 8 is that it must be an industrialization that will take the opportunity of the African Continental Free Trade Area. We must embrace the philosophy of African Continental Free Trade Area. In 2021, in spite of a huge landmass, Africa accounts only for 2.8% of the world GDP. This is too low. And lastly, I said our industrialization framework must be able to raise knowledgeable entrepreneurs. We must encourage startups. We must encourage entrepreneurs who are willing to learn and to be able to use their knowledge to be able to increase the productivity within their space. But as I round up quickly, one of the things that I think we need to do is, you'll find in the next slide, I'll just speak about it in 1 minute, because there is a country in Africa that has been done for, and that country is Egypt. We need a production transformation policy review. What does it do? This review look at the opportunities, the weaknesses, and the threat, and do a SWOT analysis of countries in Africa and for their industrialization. Again, I also want BSN to work along with OECD, work along with UNECA to be able to help other African countries to have this policy review done as preparation for the onslaught to industrialization. That's where I would like to stop. Moderator, I'm done.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Olumide Ajayi, for a very beautiful presentation on what is needed to accelerate industrialization in Africa. We hope it's going to be a very beautiful dream come true sooner than later. It's on that note that we'd like to call an expert in the banking sector who, we have spoken about Troika. It's an opportunity therefore to call on Odi Akanuba, a senior manager in the SME development unit of the African Export-Import Bank, to reflect for 5 minutes on this topic. Thank you, Odi. You are welcome. On mute.
Thank you very much, sir. And thank you very much, Dr. Ajayi, for that characteristically excellent delivery. Now, from the standpoint of the African Export-Import Bank, I cannot overemphasize how much the presentation that we've just listened to resonates with the bank. As a matter of fact, if you look at our existing strategic plan, industrialization and export development is, as a matter of fact, one of the pillars that the strategy stands on. It is an area that the bank absolutely prioritizes if it's going to meet its mandate as a trade bank for Africa. Now, what I would like to do over the next 5 minutes is essentially just first corroborate the initial presentation, but secondly, outline the activities or the interventions that we as Afreximbank are looking at with regards to the various elements that Dr. Ajayi just touched on. So the first one would be food security, food and fuel security. As a matter of fact, it's, I hope everyone can hear me. Okay, so it's obviously a priority area for us. The bank, since inception, has pumped in over $6 billion into agro processing. As a matter of fact, specifically with regards to industrial parks and special economic zones, about $1 billion has gone into that particular area of activity. Why is that? It is because we believe that those are the tools that we need to reverse the narrative of the narrative that we've been hearing about exporting raw materials and no value add. Now, how do we deploy these resources? We're doing it through financing, providing technical assistance to the value chain, and also financing the acquisition of machinery and technology, which will then enable businesses in the agro-processing value chain to add value and export. Again, I cannot overemphasize the importance of industrial parks. We think that this is something that the continent desperately needs, and it will have to be a joint effort. We're looking at PPPs. We're looking at both governments and private sector to come in to make these industrial parks a reality. Now, let me quickly touch on youth employment, which is also something that is extremely important. At Afreximbank, we believe that the youth hold the key to Africa's industrial revolution. You know, if Africa is ever going to industrialize, the youth have to play a key part. And this is why the bank is running various programs to capacitize African youth. We are providing them with the sort of financing that we think is relevant to build their businesses. This is in the form of venture capital. So in 2024, the bank is going to launch a venture capital fund, which will enable it to give patient financing to African youth so that they can build their startups and expand their operations. We're also paying close attention to various sectors that where you have high youth representation. For example, the creative industries are a big opportunity for Africa, we believe. And in that light, the bank has launched what we call the Creative Africa Nexus, CANEX, which is our umbrella for supporting the creative industries and the youth that participate in it. On the subject of technology and investment in digital infrastructure, it is clear that that is a key component of the industrialization plan that we have for the continent. As a matter of fact, our approach to technology is to look at the various impediments that we have to trade in Africa today and see if we can use technology to resolve them. These impediments include payments, KYC, regulatory information, and so on and so forth. So what has our response been? We have now gone and started to develop digital solutions to address each and every one of those impediments. There's not enough time for me to go through all of them, but the key one I would highlight is the Pan-African Payments and Settlement System, PAPS, which essentially means that as Africans trading with each other, we will be able to exchange goods and services without having to travel through a third currency. So a Nigerian in Nigeria can buy from his neighbor in Ghana and make his payment in Nigerian Naira the seller in Ghana receives payments in Ghanaian cedis, and there is no need for any sort of foreign exchange expense on either side of the transaction, because the Pan-African Payments and Settlement System would handle that. And as I said, we have similar solutions for other impediments, including KYC and regulatory information and so on and so forth. I'm happy to take questions after this. If anybody wants to know more, I will happily leave my contact information as well. Now, on the subject of wealth generation in the value chain, as a matter of fact, our entire strategy as Afreximbank now takes a value chain approach to intervention. So we think about intervention now in 3 buckets. We think about creating, so the need for Africa to manufacture, to produce. We think about connecting, which is the need for markets to be created, need for us to meet each other in places and spaces where we can actually exchange these goods and services. And then we think about deliver, which is really the logistical element of things. Goods and services need to be able to travel from one place to the other for trade to happen. So that is the value chain mentality that we've adopted over the course of the last decade or so in terms of our intervention. I think that corroborates Dr. Ajayi's narrative around wealth generation in the value chain. Now, on the subject of SMEs into the industrialization framework, that speaks directly to my heart. This is my portfolio for the bank. I'm extremely passionate about this particular area, and I'm fortunate to be working with organizations such as the ALF, who we are working with to build capacity within Africa's SME constituencies. The idea is once we give them that capacity, then they will qualify for the financing that they require to expand their businesses. We also have market access initiatives. We proactively take these SMEs into trade shows and trade fairs and any other platforms where they can get exposure for their businesses. We also develop specialized financing solutions for them, on the understanding that most SMEs will not survive if they access financing from traditional sources like commercial banks. Advocacy was another. Have I run out of time?
You have. If you could just round
up. Okay, so I'll round up with advocacy. Look, we, as Afreximbank, we are a broad-based partnership of over 50 African countries. I think there's 53 of the 54 now who are members. And we use that to advocate for all of these industrialization initiatives, which I have just spoken about. As I said, I'm more than happy to take any questions or provide any other information offline if anybody wants to know more. I thank you all for the opportunity to be here this morning, and back to you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Odi, for a beautiful reflection and shedding light to the pathway towards the realization of this objective and goal of accelerating industrialization in Africa. We're now in a session on questions and answers. And the first question is already on. You can raise your question in writing, or you can raise your hand electronically and we will call on you. Please, because we have just about 8 minutes to get this sorted out, just avoid all kinds of protocol. Just go straight to ask your question either in writing or in your as we allow you to speak. The first question that had been raised by Annette here: what are good examples of industrialization? The industry parks, for example, in Ethiopia, is that a typical example of industrialization? What is the role of foreign direct investment in growing manufacturing? So you would like to say something about that? Olumide or any of you?
Yeah, I will ask Odi to take it, but you just say that Afrexim had invested a lot in many industrial parks, and Odi will explain this, because it is part of the support they can give to accelerate industrialization in Africa. Odi, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ajayi. So, as a matter of fact, yes, any industrial park anywhere in Africa is an excellent example of industrialization. What industrial parks do, as you know, is they aggregate manufacturers, producers into one place and give them all the tools that they need to be able to manufacture, tools that they probably will not be able to generate for them. Sorry, apologies, I should put my video on. Tools that they may not be able to generate for themselves if they were operating on their own, especially in Africa where you have these functionalities like lack of power, lack of water and things like that. So once you are able to put people together in one place and provide them with all they need to manufacture, then you boost their production and export capacity. So yes, I agree that any industrial park, any properly functioning industrial park is a great example of industrialization.
Thank you, Hodi. There's another question for you, and that is from Olasimbo Adeleke. How can SMEs directly benefit from Afreximbank programs? We don't seem to feel their impact. Hodi.
Thank you very much. So the bank's SME program is relatively new, actually. But ever since the bank came into operation, it has been providing support to SMEs through financial intermediaries. So virtually every commercial bank in Africa has a credit line from Afreximbank, which they are supposed to on-lend to SMEs. So you might not know that money is from Afreximbank, but we've certainly been putting money in that direction. However, over the course of the last 2 years or so, we've decided to start to develop specialized programs targeting SMEs. These programs focus on capacity building, market access, in addition to financing. So this is where people like Dr. Ajayi and the ALF come in. They have supported us in training hundreds of SMEs over the last while, and we fully expect that number to expand astronomically over the next few years, because the impact so far has been, the feedback and the impact that we've had so far has been extraordinary. So I guarantee that you will see more and hear more as far as what we're doing around capacity building and market access for SMEs is concerned in coming years.
Okay, maybe we can take just one more question. Is there any criteria of eligibility to accompanying SMEs with those different supports to extension? If yes, what are they?
The principal criteria for us is that the SME that we are supporting is or has the propensity to join export value chains in the medium term. So we as Afreximbank are a trade bank. So our job is to ensure that Africa trades and Africa exports more. So if you are an SME who can either export directly or support an exporter or in some way integrate into export value chains, then that is our first criteria. That's our principal criteria. I think Dr. Ajayi wanted to come in and say something.
No. It was
okay. All right.
Thank you. Before we close, we have one more question. How do we overcome bad governance with great initiatives like this?
Okay, I will take that up. You see, one of the things that we are proposing is a bit, because there is no time, is first through appropriate advocacy tools and instruments. Second is to provide technical support for countries to be able to review their potential for industrialization, which is what I call a production transformation policy review, which has been done for Egypt. We can do that for other countries by providing this, so that at least they have a framework that they can use to begin to initiate industrialization within their own country and space.
Thank you, Olumide. We take the final question. Is there a synergy or any from this coming from Tina Ozoka? Is there a synergy or any form of business relationship between the Afreximbank and the free trade zone scheme that we see.
When you say free trade zone scheme, are you talking about the AFCFTA?
Yes, please. We do have free trade zones in some countries where companies can manufacture tax-free, things like that as incentive. Is that similar to the industrial park we are talking about?
So yes, so industrial parks, special economic zones are very similar. And the bank's support extends to both in equal measure. They drive the same agenda and they drive the same outcomes. So we are as supportive of special economic zones as we are of industrial parks. That's correct.
Let me thank very sincerely Olumide and Odi for this beautiful presentation and reflection today. It's been such a great opportunity for all of us to learn from the duo on the way forward for industrialization in Africa, which has given us great hope. We would also like to thank Annette, Annette, and a couple of others who have asked questions like Mia, Olasumba Adeleke Omolola Lola, as well as Tina, for the questions they have raised, which has helped in enriching the discussion for today. It's important for us to know that as we move towards next week, that we are preparing for next week again, another special session on decision-making leadership. And the topic for next week will be on geopolitics and technology. And the speaker will be the commercial director of Huawei, who is Richard Spence, and who is the commercial director. We'll be talking about geopolitics and technology. Our reflector will be John Limbard, who is a member of the China Business Council. And as the reflector on this, it will also be for the same timing, for approximately about an hour, a little bit, about less than an hour. We do hope that you enjoyed today's program, and that thanks to the people who have played very key role in making this happen, thanks to BSN as they celebrate 35 years, thanks to Change, and thanks to the Culture Factor. This striker have succeeded in bringing to the forefront every single Tuesday morning opportunity to share knowledge, to increase our leadership skill, and to improve our ability to influence not just other people, but our environment. So on that note, I would like to thank all the great sponsors of this program, as well as the speakers for today and Reflector. We also like to thank the people who have shown up today in spite of the tight timing. We do hope you enjoyed the session today, and we look forward to having you again next week, Tuesday.